Cassie here, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to talk to you about character profiles. So recently I started doing some official character profiling for a new story I'm working on, and a few people had asked me about how I do that and what my process is like for that, so I wanted to talk about it. Now, full disclosure, I've actually never done this before. I've never made official character profiles before because I've just never really found it to be necessary for me. I definitely like to work from an outline for a lot of my process, but I am certainly not a hardcore plotter. For a lot of my process, I am a bit of a pantser, and character development is usually one of those things that I just pants the heck out of. But this time I was in a situation where I really wanted to write, but I couldn't bring my computer with me, and I couldn't really get like fully into writing mode in my head because there were other people around and stuff. So instead I just kind of played around with my characters and started writing some character profiles, and I found that it was actually way more helpful than I thought it would be. Not only did it help me with my character development, but it also helped me with the plot development, which I'm going to be talking about next week in Tuesday's video, so stay tuned for that. So anyway, this whole character profiling thing was super awesome, way better than I expected, and so I wanted to tell you how I do it. I've heard of a lot of people doing character profiles via like little survey things online, or there's like questionnaires that you can find that give you ideas of questions to ask about your characters. Kind of like those old MySpace or Facebook surveys that people used to fill out that are like, what's your biggest fear? Or what was your worst childhood memory? Things like that. For me, I feel like those have never really worked very well. Like, it's a fun idea, I guess, but the specific questions weren't really ones that directly related to my story enough to be helpful. So for me, I did it a completely different way, a lot less structured, and I am going to attempt to explain it to you. Given that it's not a very structured process, it might not be very easy to explain, so bear with me. So for this video, I'm going to be talking to you about one of my four main characters. He is not one of the two protagonists, but he is one of the two more prominent and important supporting characters. So although this story is just in idea mode right now, and I'm not really super worried about spoilers, I feel like this character is a good one to discuss with you because I can give you details of his story and it's not really gonna be super spoilery because he's not one of the protagonists. So anyway, that's just to explain why I chose this character for the video. So basically, how I started my character profiling is I just put at the top of the page, Bryces Journey. I know my handwriting is terrible. When I'm writing stuff like this, my priority is to get my thoughts on the page as quickly as humanly possible, and I do not pay any attention to legibility or even if I'm spelling things correctly or writing real words, as long as I know what it means later. So basically, I had a loose idea of where the story is going to start in the beginning and where it's going to end up in the end. I don't have like specifics like the very first scene or the very last scene, but just the basic overall plot. Or I should say the basic overall subplot, because that's really all I have so far is the romantic subplot and where I want that to start and finish. But anyway, so I started this out by writing Bryce's Journey at the top of the page, and I asked myself, where does Bryce Miller start out in his life at the beginning of this story? Where is he at physically, emotionally, mentally? So this first part says that Bryce starts out as a happy-go-lucky, funny, nice guy. He plays football and works on his family farm, and he plans to take over the farm when he grows up. So that kind of tells you a little bit about where Bryce is at the beginning of the story. Things that I didn't write down because I just sort of already know them in my head is that the story starts out with three of the four main characters beginning their senior year of high school. So that sort of tells us where Bryce is at physically, that he's in high school. This also tells us that he lives on a farm, he grew up in a farm town, he's planning to take over his family's farm when he grows up and when his parents are older. That's sort of his life plan. It also tells us that he plays football, so That's sort of a physical and a mental element of who he is as a person and where he's at the beginning of the story. And it tells you a little bit about his personality. He's just a happy-go-lucky, funny, kind of chill dude. The next thing I asked myself is, what is Bryce Miller's inciting event? Now, this is an important question to ask of every single character in your story, not just to ask of the story as a whole. Because Bryce Miller's inciting event is not the same as the protagonist's inciting event. Because Bryce is a different person and his perspective of life is different, and what is really important to Charlotte, the MC, is not necessarily as important to Bryce. So to try to remain a little bit spoiler-free, I'll just say that Bryce's inciting event is when his girlfriend breaks up with him. That is the moment in the story that sets his life on a different trajectory. It takes him by surprise, it rips him out of the mindset that he's in at that moment, and it completely changes his course. This goes on to say that he has to deal with his best friend dating his ex-girlfriend. He's angry and bitter for a while. He feels betrayed and doesn't understand what this new guy has that he doesn't. Some other things I thought that Bryce might be dealing with at this time is that his family might be dealing with some money issues because the farm is declining and maybe things aren't going as well for them as they had in the past. And in that situation, his friend, who is very wealthy, might try to help him with that, but his wealthy friend is also now dating his ex-girlfriend and they're kind of in a fight right now. So that might be a little bit of an ego bruise for him to have his friend who's now dating his ex trying to help him with money issues. Eventually he sees how much his ex-girlfriend and this new guy love each other and how good they are for each other. And I wrote down here that there should be another inciting event there, something specific that happens that kind of opens his eyes to the fact that maybe he and this girl weren't really meant to be together and maybe she is actually better with this other person. The farm starts to improve with some extra effort, and I jotted down some ideas of how that might happen. So that's kind of it for Bryce's journey. I know it might not sound very significant or like a lot happens, but that's because he's not the protagonist. Bryce is just a supporting character, but he is a pretty prominent supporting character, so some of the things going on in his life will be significant minor plot points in the story. But basically, to sum up, what I've done is started out with where is this character at the beginning of the story, physically, mentally, what's going on in his life, how does he feel about what's going on, and then what is the inciting event that changes all of that, and how does he feel about that event? Does it make him a happier person? Was it for the best, or is he sad? And if he is sad, is he going to stay sad, or is that something that he's going to grow through and learn, and maybe he'll come around to realizing that maybe it was a good thing after all? And if his initial feelings about the inciting event are going to change, what is the event or events that lead him to making that change? In this case, what is it that's going to happen that makes him see his breakup with his girlfriend as actually a good thing, and that maybe it was for the best and he's not upset about it anymore? And then what else might be happening in this person's life that's not necessarily related to the inciting event? In this case, we have Bryce's parents having money issues. That's sort of a minor subplot. And then last but not least, we look at where this person is at the end of the story. Where are they now? Who are they now? What's going on in their life now? Are they the same person that they were at the beginning of the story, or have the events of the story transformed them into something new? Now, Bryce is a character who's probably not going to undergo too much of a transformation in this story. I kind of want him to sort of grow a little bit, but not quite all the way yet. And that's okay. Not every character in your story has to undergo some huge transformation and be a different person at the end of the story. But you don't want them to be in the exact same place, the exact same person with the exact same thoughts as they are in the beginning of the story. You definitely don't want that for your protagonist, but even for your supporting characters. That's going to make for a boring story that people are going to regret reading. They're going to come to the end of the story and say, why did I even read this if everything is exactly the same as it was at the beginning of the story? What was the point? Like, yeah, all of this stuff happened, but it didn't change anything or alter the character's direction or make them take a good deep look at themselves. It just sort of happened and that's it. So that's not really what you want. So again, because Bryce is a supporting character, this was a really basic example of a character profile. My two protagonist character profiles are a lot more in depth and a lot more happens, a lot bigger of a transformation happens. There's a lot more little, you know, just details in there because they're the more important people in the story. But Bryce's journey is still absolutely important. And I think the biggest thing that I learned that I hadn't really thought about before ever doing character profiles is to ask about every character's inciting event in the story, not just the protagonist, and not just the story as a whole. So in conclusion, I learned a lot from doing character profiles for the first time. And I know this was kind of like confusing probably, and I don't know if I really explained it super well, but hopefully you learned something from this and can apply it to your own story and maybe work on some character profiles of your own. If you have any other tips related to creating character profiles, please let us know in the comments below. I love to learn more about that stuff. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, and if you want to hear more from me in the future, subscribe below. My first novel, Keep No Record, is available for purchase on Amazon, and I will link that in the description below. And that's it. I'll see y'all next time, and have a great day. Bye!